It did not take long for the Giants to suffer their first significant injury of the season, and though football is a game built on toughness, speed, and power, it is equally a sport where vulnerability lurks behind every snap. On that night, with fans barely settled into their seats and the smell of hot dogs, popcorn, and fresh turf still lingering in the cool air, the tone of the season seemed to shift in an instant. There had been excitement, chants reverberating through the stands, jerseys flashing under the bright lights, and the sheer optimism that always comes with the start of a new campaign. Yet only a few minutes into the first quarter, everything was muted by the reality of injury, the brutal reminder that careers and seasons can change in the blink of an eye. Linebacker Micah McFadden, a young man who had poured 4 years of blood, sweat, and study into solidifying his role as the Giants' right inside linebacker, was suddenly on the ground. His leg, twisted beneath him in an unnatural and terrifying way, brought the stadium to silence. The play had started normally enough. Austin Eckler, the Commanders' veteran running back, had taken the ball with his trademark explosiveness, darting forward and searching for daylight through the defensive line. McFadden, ever alert, had read the movement perfectly. His eyes locked onto Eckler, his body moved in stride, and he closed the gap with that sharp burst of acceleration that made him one of the defense's most reliable tacklers. But as bodies collided, the weight of the tackle and the momentum of Eckler's drive bore down on McFadden's planted leg. It was not a gruesome injury by football's often harsh visual standards, but the reaction of players around him told the story. Teammates instantly waved to the sideline for medical staff, their urgency betraying how serious it was. The Giants' trainers sprinted out, kneeling by McFadden, who clutched at his leg, his face twisted in both physical pain and the sinking emotional recognition of what might have just happened. Fans, many of whom had come to cheer, laugh, and enjoy the entertainment of sport, now sat frozen. In the lower sections, where expressions are visible, you could see hands covering mouths, parents trying to explain to children why the cheers had stopped, and veterans of the sport solemnly shaking their heads. McFadden lay there, staring at the sky for a moment, as though in disbelief. A fourth-year player out of Indiana, his journey had been one of perseverance. He wasn't a flashy first-round draft pick or an overnight star. He had built his reputation step by step, through training camp battles, through preseason grit, through the countless hours of studying film and proving he could be trusted in crucial moments. That trust had finally translated into a starting position, a role that symbolized his transformation from hopeful rookie into a cornerstone of the defense. And now, in an instant, the cruel hand of fate had intervened. As the trainers worked, checking his leg, stabilizing it, and gently talking him through the process, his teammates gathered. Some stood in a circle, heads bowed. Others crouched nearby, patting his helmet, whispering encouragement, reminding him that he wasn't alone. The human side of football, often masked by the violence and competitiveness of the game, shone through in those quiet gestures. Opponents from the Commanders, too, clapped lightly in acknowledgement of the struggle. Eckler himself, the man who had been tackled on the play, walked back toward McFadden, bending down for a brief word, perhaps an apology, perhaps just a message of respect. The cart rolled onto the field, its presence like a bell toll signaling that the situation was serious. The sight of that vehicle always stirs unease, for it means that walking off is not an option, that the injury demands immediate caution. As McFadden was lifted carefully onto the cart, fans rose to their feet in unison, delivering an ovation that was less about the game and more about the man. They applauded his effort, his courage, and his presence, hoping that their support could bridge the gulf of uncertainty he was about to enter. McFadden, fighting the pain, managed to raise a hand in acknowledgement. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes about his character. Even in distress, he was thinking of the connection between himself and those who supported him. The Giants' sideline looked shaken. Coaches conferred hurriedly, defensive captains huddled, and the sense of disruption was palpable. Football is not only a physical contest but also a mental one, and losing a starter so early has ripple effects that go far beyond the immediate substitution. McFadden wasn't just another body on the field. He was a communicator, a reader of plays, someone trusted to adjust in real time when offenses tried to disguise their intentions. His absence forced the Giants to reshuffle, moving backups into roles they weren't fully prepared to fill on such short notice. The Commanders, showing the ruthless efficiency of a professional team, took advantage. Quarterback Sam Howell dropped back and connected with tight end Zach Ertz for a touchdown pass that capped the drive. The scoreboard shifted to 7-0 in favor of Washington, but the atmosphere remained subdued. Even Commanders fans, who cheered their team's success, tempered their excitement with the knowledge of what had just happened to an opponent. In sports, victory often feels hollow when it comes at the expense of a player's health. For McFadden, though, the real battle was only beginning. Injuries in the NFL are more than physical events. They are mental wars, stretching into the weeks and months that follow. The pain of the moment is sharp, but the uncertainty that lingers afterward is heavier. Questions swirl. How long will the recovery take? Will I regain my form? Will I lose my starting spot? Will this define me? These are the unspoken fears of every player who goes down, and though they rarely admit them publicly, they hang in the air like smoke. McFadden had experienced setbacks before. At Indiana, he had faced doubts about his size and whether his skill set would translate to the NFL. But he fought through them, refining his technique, building strength, and proving himself as a relentless competitor. That same grit would be required now, perhaps more than ever. His story, after all, had never been one of easy success. It had always been about resilience. The game continued, as it always does, because football never pauses for long. Yet, for the Giants, every snap carried the shadow of what had transpired. Defensive alignments looked less confident, communication seemed a step behind, and fans could sense the void. The injury was not just a single moment. It was a thread that wove itself through the rest of the night, through the post-game press conferences, through the whispered conversations about the season ahead. In the locker room afterward, players spoke with heavy voices. Some described McFadden as the heart of the defense, a guy who gave everything without seeking the spotlight. Others talked about how much he meant as a teammate, always encouraging, always focused. The coaches, careful not to speculate on the extent of the injury before doctors confirmed it, nevertheless emphasized his importance to the team's identity. Reporters scribbled notes, cameras flashed, and the narrative began to build. Not about the outcome of the game, but about the man who had been lost in the first quarter. Fans, too, took to social media, flooding timelines with messages of support. They posted clips of his best plays, shared photos of him signing autographs, and reminded each other of the countless times he had stepped up in crucial moments. Hashtags emerged, rallying behind him, turning his injury into a communal cause. In the modern world, where athletes are more than just players on the field but figures in the lives of millions, the outpouring was swift and emotional. McFadden's journey from that night forward would be long, uncertain, and challenging. But in that moment, as he was carted away, as his teammates regrouped, as fans applauded, his story deepened. He was no longer just a linebacker filling a role. He was a symbol of the fragility and courage that defines football itself. And whether his recovery took weeks, months, or longer, the image of him raising his hand to acknowledge the crowd would endure, etched into the memory of everyone who witnessed it.